Welcome to Stagecoach, where you'll find the best Western books on the market and the men and women who write them. This podcast is brought to you by Dusty Saddles Publishing, home of the best-selling authors in the Western genre. This is your host, Ginger Winters. Join us as we continue the story of Zephaniah Mountain Man, Rocky Mountain Maturity by Mackessy.
Chapter 8, Home. I finished the first corral, then the cabin. Immediately after, I set to work on the barn, having finished all the building projects and knowing we will survive snug in my handiwork while the coming winter howls down the mountains and across the prairie. It's a fall morning. Behind the cabin to the north is the river. Behind the river grow the trees. To the south, in the far distance, are hills, also covered in sagebrush. I have not had the time to venture that far yet. Looking south, there are many more rolling hills to the west. To the east, the land gently flows down. I have no idea how far. In between all of that is our home, our 5-room log cabin, surrounding us in an ocean of sagebrush for as far as an eye can see. Rare are the days when looking out we fail to see first antelope and then the occasional herd of buffalo. In the woods behind us live deer, elk, a few moose, and of course all the many small animals that you would expect to find in the forest. Beavers are rare. I reckon trappers have come this way and, as is their manner, trapped them almost completely out. I consider myself a mountain man, not a true trapper. I'd rather hunt my supper than trap it. I am letting the beaver come back. In the trees, I built many shelves, which I fill with our winter's supply of meat, usually buffalo. The hides we soft tan ourselves. We wear buckskins. In trunks left untouched are our old clothes. Buckskins made more sense out here. There's little I need from rendezvous or from a town. Once a year, we take a line of pack horses to buy our extra supplies for the winter, like coffee, sugar, condensed milk, beans, and, of course, salt. We are alone in a sea of sagebrush. The 6 of us are happy, healthy, and content. This fall, Mary presented me with a daughter. Alice had another son, and Willow births another daughter. There are now 9 of us in our unusual family. We thought we would be left alone by intrusions from the world. I reckon I was wrong. It was not the Blackfoot that found us. I have heard from men as swift as antelope that they are no longer interested in my scalp. The Crow stay content in the Yellowstone. The Cheyenne that attacked the 9-wagon group of travelers that should have never left home, they have not returned. The invaders are white men in wagons on their way to Oregon. I was never so surprised in my life when I see white shapes trudging toward us from the east. I called my wives. They join me around the fire ring. We drink coffee and grill venison, watching them heading our way. I'm curious how they expect to cross the great stony mountains in their wagons. I see a scout riding out front of the dozen wagons. I grab my rifle, a pair of pistols, and my possibles as he veers in my direction. I truly wish he had not done that. In the years we have lived here, I traveled most of the sagebrush land in front of our home for at least 5 miles in every direction. I never found a trail. The scout appears to be following a trail. Maybe only he could see it. I do not like the feeling crawling up my back. It's kind of like a horn of cold creek water splashed on your back during a scorching summer's day. When I can make out the rider from the horse, I ask my wives and children to run off out of sight. There ain't no reason I reckon that this rider needs to know my family business. I check the caps on each nipple on my weapons when the rider sees me, and in about an hour, he rides up to my fire ring. "We'll all be," he yells at me. I stand and move the muzzle of my rifle in his direction. "Easy there, Zeph. I'd rather you not let that hammer down on me," he tells me. The man obviously knows me, but I do not recognize him. "How do you know me? Who told you I'd be here?" I ask him. "No one told me anything about you, Zeph. In fact, it's been about 7 or 8 years since I last saw you. Don't you recognize me?" "No, I don't. And what's more, I don't want you in front of my house here." "Your front yard? How long you been here, Zeph?" he asked me. "Ain't none of your business. I'll be asking you right nice to move on. I reckon you have overstayed your welcome," I told him. "Can I at least water my horse?" "I reckon. Go ahead." The man swings a leg over the rump of his horse and sets foot on the ground. "Hot one today, ain't it?" he asks, taking off his hat. When he does, I take a good close look at him. "Is that you, Joshua?" I ask him. Recognition hit me like a fist upside the head. I know this man. We ran into each other at Rendezvous a few years back. I knew you'd recognize me, old man. I seen you ain't feebled yet, living up here by your lonesome. He laughs at something only he thinks is funny. We ran into each other at rendezvous. I sure wish there was still work for a trapper and that rendezvous was still shining, he says. Hold up a minute, Joshua. What do you mean if rendezvous was still shining? And trappers, what do you mean? I asked him. I walked toward him. Of course, I moved the muzzle of my rifle well away from his gutsack. I reckon stuck up here you do not know any news. Rendezvous stopped 2 years ago, my friend, when the beaver market dropped. Trapping as a way of life just stopped, he tells me. What happened to beaver, I ask. Some sort of silkworm from China killed the beaver hat. Now the dandies all want a hat made from this silk. From a worm, Joshua tries to explain. That can't be right. How can a worm make silk as strong as a beaver plew? I don't know, Zeph, but it's true. I heard it from Mr. Richardson himself. Didn't you sell some plews to him? I did. There ain't a finer man around than him. I reckon if he said it, then it must be true. You sure you heard it all true? I did. Where's that water? Asked Joshua. Down by the corrals. Where do you think? I tell him. I could never imagine rendezvous no longer in the mountains. Come on and I'll show you. Joshua follows me to the corrals, to the trough I made for the horses. He's looking over my horses as I pet his. What kind of a horse are them tall critters you got in there, Zeph? Those are some Irish draught horses, mares I crossed with a mountain mustang stud. I ride one of the offspring. They make a good and strong riding horse. I laughed telling Joshua about my horses. This here mount of mine is plumb wore out. Would you consider selling me one of your horses, Zeb? I asked Joshua. I could, but first tell me how you're looking to get those wagons over the mountains. Joshua looks at me right funny, almost like I got a second head. Do you know what they call this land you settled on? No, what? It's called the South Pass. It's a pass through the mountains, an easy pass. Wagons can cross right here at South Pass. Like us, we'll be crossing tomorrow morning. From here on, it's a gentle ride west. Ha, you almost had me. Now tell me the truth. That is the truth, Zeph. Several old mountain men traveled through here and found the pass over the Rockies. The pass itself is sitting right out there, a couple miles from your cabin. Honest, I asked, hating the notion. I would not try tricking an old mountain man with your reputation, Zeph. Now I know you ain't telling it true. I am, Zeph. I'm brutally honest. You didn't know? How would I know? I settled here after man as swift as antelope showed me the area. I'm telling you this, my friend. By selling some of your horses and maybe providing a meal to the pilgrims heading to Oregon, you can make a pile of money, Zeph. Ain't sure I need money that bad, Joshua. Besides, I have everything I need right here. Until a swindler or the government tries taking it from you, they had better come expecting a fight if they come trying for my land. Did you file on it? No, why? Tell you what I will do for you since we trapped together. When I come through, if you write Mr. Richardson a letter, I will take it to him. But if I were you, I'd have him file on this land for you. Well, that ain't a bad idea. If you will stop by, I'll give you the family price for the horse of your choice, as long as it don't belong to one of my family. I'll be back for the first snowfall. Thanks, I tell him. That was how I found out that Beaver had gone under. It was also how I come to success. I let Joshua pick out his horse. I took his worn-out nag in trade, which I sold much later for double what Joshua paid for my horse. Joshua returned like he said he would. He took my letter like he said he would. Mr. Richardson filed on 640 acres around my log home and sent me the title. I've fought in 2 gun battles against swindlers to keep my place, but that's a different story. We sell horses to the wagon trains coming through the pass. We earned a right good living for a while. But the mules, I reckon there was not a big market for mules until the pilgrims flooded across the mountains. Mules. As I recount my story, I feel I should include a few instances concerning the mules while on the trail west. I always heard the smartest mules were the wheelers. I did not know that to be true. First of all, our wheelers are horses. The front pair were just my smartest mules, especially the near side animals. We did not have a mean streak, but he was a prankster. He was all the time trying for your hat, and if you let down your guard, he'd get it. I will admit he has cost me several hats. That is until he met his match in the form of a mountain lion. One warm afternoon, we had just crossed a low creek. On crossing, I stopped to refill our water barrel and let the animals drink. On my command, the team pulls into their harness. It is a flat stretch, and in only a few minutes, the wagon's up to speed, and we're making pretty good time. Coming around a blind corner, the forest grows closer on both sides of the trail. Here the trail follows a wide path. As the wagons pulled by the team straightens, we pass by a finger of rocks leading down from the hill jutting close to the trail. I don't think anything about it. That mule does. I ride my saddle horse somewhere alongside the team, but the corner is not wide enough, so I lead the team past these rocks. I look back to shout to my wives, and I'm going to ride ahead. As I turn, I see that mule stopping in his tracks because a mountain lion is jumping from the edge of the rocks down to the team. That lion would have landed directly on that mule if he hadn't stopped and given a little jump. That lion lands on the ground directly in front of that angry mule. He must have been a bit shaken up, missing his target and all, because that mule repeats that short hop, landing both large hooves on the back of that cat. That mule commenced to scream and stomp that cat almost flat. It is a waste of a fine pelt, but there is no way to stop that dang mule until he wears himself out. The girls hear the commotion, see the rising dust, but cannot ride past the point to see what is happening. I reckon it is just as well. It is a bloody sight. I grab a hold of the mule and try urging the team forward. He slowly tires of stomping on the remains of the cat and lets me move the team forward. I hear one of my wives stifle a scream as they both ride by that mess. Thankfully, both boys are laying on the bed I made for them in the front of the wagon. They both are curious but cannot see the remains of the wild cat stomped into the road. Since the large freight wagons like Studebaker and Murphy are not built with a seat up front, the girls reckon we can rig a seat or better yet a bed for them or for the boys to rest in when needed. Left to myself, I'll choose to ride a horse all day. But Mary and Alice do not think it best for boys at such a young age to have to ride a horse all day long. We all are learning as we continue through our life in these mountains. I reckon we have time to learn what is best for the boys as we continue on. It may be just bad luck for the cat to choose that one ornery mule as a target, but we reward that mule for his quick thinking and the fighting skills. He earns a brushing every evening. All the mules stay on a picket rope through the night. When showing signs of nerves, I hobble them also, but most nights it's not necessary. At the end of their day, each mule and the wheelers get a quarter bucket of mixed grain and cornmeal. The brave mule earns himself a double portion. The girls reckon he needs a name. I leave it for them to give him one. It takes much longer than I thought it would be, until the second time he earns our fondness and some extra care. The Outlaws. One summer morning after setting out from an overnight camp, the still unnamed mule begins showing signs of obvious distress. I've not seen him act like this and cannot guess what is bothering him. I ride up to his side. When I get there, I see dirt from the trail fly up as the mule's belly. Moments later, I hear the shot and know someone has shot a rifle at me, landing the rifle ball a bit too close for comfort. I'm thinking of speeding the team along and racing from the area until a second bit of dirt flies from the trail. On hearing the shot, I begin slowing the team. On the riverboat during the trip upriver to the mountains, I discussed this sort of moment with both of my wives. Unable to agree on an appropriate response, I give both girls a pair of pistols, a rifle, and a shotgun. Each of my wives wears her 2 pistols in holsters on a belt slung around their hips. I spend time during that trip upriver teaching them both how to shoot their pistols, my rifle, and their shotguns. I do not have enough time to make them as proficient as I think they should be, but I know they can protect themselves. Besides, not many men expect a woman to shoot back or surprise them by drawing a weapon. Today, as the team brings the wagons to a stop, both women are on the opposite side of the wagon and the team than I am. Both look ready as opposed to afraid. It is amazing what difference a year living with the Crow and our time in the mountains will have on them. They may be scared, but they do not show it. I turn my horse nose to nose with the brave and still unnamed mule. The 2 outlaw riders slowly guide their horses close to the team. "It's a good thing you stopped, Pilgrim. I was fixing to send another rifle ball your way." "That one was not going to hit the trail, but you," says the dirty rider, holding a rifle lazily aimed in my direction. He spares a single look at my wives. I reckon he thinks they're boys. Both are riding saddles, wearing jeans and long-sleeve shirts with wide-brimmed hats. "You best tell your boys to keep their hands well away from their side guns. They can keep them, just don't touch them. I have a friend in the trees keeping the 3 of you under his rifle sights. Do what I order and you'll see the sunset and tomorrow's rise. Cause me a problem and, well, you know what I mean," says the desperado, sitting his horse on the same side of the wagon and the team as the rifleman. "What do you want?" I asked him. Okay, I like that. Yeah, let's get right down to business, says the same man riding next to the mule with no name. Do you have extra weapons, any powder or caps? I need to arm some extra lads that just joined the gang, he laughs. He takes no notice of the mule he is stretching his hand out to pet. Both of the mule's eyes open wide and are quickly rimmed in bright white. That I learned is called wall-eyed. That mule carries a tail. Prior to exploding, he turns wall-eyed. That mule violently chomps down on the uninvited hand heading his way. Separated by less than 18 inches, I hear every small bone in that hand grind into slivers. The blood-curdling scream bellowed from the trapper outlaw terrifies each horse, including mine, except I am the only one ready for the opportunity. I slide from the saddle, pulling a .54 caliber horse pistol from the pommel holster. As my boots hit the trail, I aim at the first outlaw, pulling back the hammer with my thumb while I aim with my finger lightly on the trigger. Wrapping my finger around the bit of metal, I begin applying pressure against the trigger. The hammer falls on the cap, exploding the powder in the cylinder. A .54 caliber brown ball of hot lead flies out of the barrel, propelled by 45 grains of black powder. It has a short distance to travel. As the horse reaches the extent of his jump, his front feet begin their return to the trail. Landing on the trail, the pistol ball lands centered in the chest of a second highwayman. Both of the riders hold leather reins, trying to gain control of his horse unsuccessfully. The look in his eyes displays the dire knowledge of his impending death. His lips pull back, exposing black and broken teeth in a deadly grimace. He looks down. Seeing the growing red stain, he looks up at me. My left hand pulls the hammer back on a second horse pistol. My finger finds the trigger, applies pressure, and for the second time the cap explodes. A second lead ball flies toward the dying man. The pistol flying back in my hand is a satisfying annoyance. The ball hits. The outlaw falls to the ground. The anxious cries of the outlaw sitting his horse too close to the mule echoes off the hillsides. That outlaw is repeatedly striking the mule on his sensitive nose. Instead of releasing the intrusive hand, the stubborn mule renews the pressure. The outlaw struggles. My third pistol fires. The ball strikes the desperado in the forehead. It might have been a good shot, except that I was aiming for the center of his chest. I'll take luck whenever it rears. Both brigands are falling to the trail. The stubborn mule releases the hand. I urge my horse towards my wives. Get down, there's another rifle in the trees. Get down, I yell. Riding towards them, I move my horse to stand in front of both wives. They both slide to the ground. With hands on the reins, both women guide their horses behind the wagon. There are no shots. I grab River Otter and Nate from the bed of the wagon, handing them both to Mary and Alice. Still no shots head my way. Using knee pressure, I move my horse to the side of the team. I take the reins of the outlaw's saddle horse and take them behind the wagon of my wives. Hang on to these, I tell Mary. Where are you going? Asks Alice. To get that last outlaw. Be careful, they both say. I race my horse into the tree line the two outlaws rode out of. There are no shots. In the tree line, I stop and listen. I can hear the blood racing behind my ears. I slow my breathing, trying to calm myself. It works. The roaring in my neck slows. My pulse evens out. I can hear forest noises. Two squirrels argue from the top of the tree next to me. They're angry I'm trespassing. I keep my horse still, listening. Next, I hear birds chirping to each other. One squirrel stops its screeching to climb the tree and sail into a branch in another tree. Two ravens answer the squirrel as they float on thermals above me. The many forest noises prove the outlaw's warning of a third man lying in wait for me. It was a lie. I don't remember actually learning about forest noises during my years spent living in the Crow Village. I must have just absorbed the knowledge. Holstering the third empty pistol, I pull my last pistol from the pommel holster before circling within the trees. I hear a horse calling to my horse. I lay a hand gently over his muzzle. I do not want him to announce my presence. Slowly, I make my way to the noisy horse. The pistol's not necessary. Standing, tied to trees, still wearing pack frames and panniers, are three pack horses. I take their lead ropes and bring them back to the wagons. The girls have moved the wagons past the bodies laying in the trail. I tie the three pack horses behind the wagon with the pair of saddle horses. I reckon the threat of a third man holding a rifle was hollow. Are you two okay? Ready to move on? I ask him. Yes, let's go, says Mary. I'm ready also. I collected their weapons. I added them to the box under the bed of the wagon where you keep the rest of the possibles, says Alice. Thanks. Did you go through their pockets? I asked her. Certainly not. I do not have a limit to. I could not touch those dead men, she admits. I'll do it, then we'll get moving, I tell him. What's in the packs on those horses? Mary asks me as I turn out every pocket on both bodies. I add everything into the hat from the first outlaw. I don't know. We'll look through them tonight. We'll look here, I tell her, holding up an envelope. What? An envelope filled with paper money, I tell her, standing up and checking the second man. I add it all into the hat and add to the empty pocket of Mary's saddlebags. I take their belts, holding a knife and a hawk. I jump into my saddle, ride to the front of the team, and patting the unnamed mule, urge him forward. We cover 15 miles that day. Blackfoot Raid. It is a cold, rainy spring night, a good night to be inside the cabin, except I'm not in my cabin with my 3 wives, 2 sons, and 3 babies. I've been hunting. Right now I'm taking full advantage of this opportunity to eat and rest at a camp I regularly use. If the temperature drops a couple more degrees, it will snow. I build up the fire. I have 3 sticks wound with bread dough, browning over the coals with 2 sticks of sliced buffalo hump, slowly grilling over the coals and flames of the small fire. The coffee pot is bubbling. The brew is almost ready to pour. Tonight is a good night to spoil myself. I dig out a can of condensed milk and a cone of brown sugar from a pack. I'm drooling over the anticipation of that first sip of that first cup of coffee. I'm boiling buffalo bones for stock to make stew for tomorrow. After the bones release most of their flavor and marrow, I'll give them to the dogs. They can use a treat also. These are the dogs I recovered from the wagon train, attacked by Cheyenne warriors. Antelope and I did not arrive in time to save anyone that night, but I souvenired these 3 dogs. The female delivered 6 furry beasts, looking like both the mom and the lazy dad lying next to me. I brought them both with me this trip. There's 6 pups riding a large cantle bag slung over my saddle horn. I sit a saddle, which I begun using again. While living in the Crow Village, I stopped riding with a saddle, and that's when I favored riding bareback. This was to be a quick hunt to bring in deer or any fresh camp meat. Since arriving in camp, all 6 dogs have stuck right close to me and in this tent. We had moved from Stanzalone's winter camp to build our own home on property I file on, close to the South Pass. Well, me, this pup's parents, and the 6 8-week-old pups are enjoying the time away and the heat of the fire and the supper shortly to come. When the dad gets up and walks outside, I pay attention. He does not go out at night unless it's absolutely necessary. Kind of like me. I look over my shoulder for my rifle and possibles hanging from an ash branch, lashed to the tent's frame. My 2 pistols are in my belt on the opposite end of that same branch. I have a second brace hidden in the blankets under the buffalo robe on top of the pile of cedar branches, which is my bed. I'm about to pull up the perfectly brown bread when he walks inside the tent. Looking between me and his mate, he's rumbling deep in his chest. I don't understand it, but the female dog sure does. She wakes the pups with her nose in a deep warning. For the first time, they do not make little puppy noises while snuggled in their bearskin. He looks back at me and barks as I pull off pieces of bread and stuff them down my throat. He refuses an offer. Something must be out there. He never refuses any kind of tidbit. The female is up and on her feet. The male leaves the warmth of the lodge again. I notice the snow has begun. The mom is frantic. I stand, put on my winter coat, strap the gun belt over the coat, throw the possibles bag over my shoulder, and grab for my rifle. As I'm stepping toward the bed for the second pair of pistols, the male enters the lodge. With a sharp bark, the female leads the pups outside. He looks at me, gives me the same bark, and follows her out. Looking around, I grab a second knife and a hawk. I exit the lodge. The dogs are at the top of the creek's bank. 5 feet below is the creek. Not just the creek, but a rock-strewn crossing. I lay all of my weapons in the brush at the edge of the bank. When I'm confident they can't be seen and the dogs are safe in a small cave situated halfway from the ledge in the rocky ground, I head back the 30 feet to my tent. Inside, I pour that anticipated cup of coffee, remove the hump steaks from the fire, and begin eating. I add wood to the fire. Every few minutes, I stir the boiling pot of bones. That's when I remember the tent sitting next to this one. It holds all my furs and skins, plus trade goods, all my extra supplies and foods. There's also an extra rifle and 4 pistols hidden under a buffalo robe. I'm thinking about getting them when I hear horses stop outside the lodge. All I have is the knife on my belt. Too late now. I add wood to the fire and stir the pot. Unannounced and without a warning or inquiry, 5 Blackfoot warriors stand in the snow in front of the tent. Without revealing any of the emotions pouring through me, fear, anger, and curiosity, I keep stirring the pot of bones. The biggest man, the apparent leader, begins asking me questions in the guttural language of the Blackfoot, which I really don't understand. I sign that I do understand. From then on, our conversation is in the universal sign language shared by most of the Indian tribes. They tell me I need to feed them. They help themselves to what I prepared for myself. One of them finishes my coffee cup, then holds the cup out for me, asking for a refill. I pour fresh coffee into my cup. He spits out that first sip. This is not like the first cup, he signs to me. I need milk and sugar to make it, and I need more meat and bread from my tent next to this one. Can I get it? The leader signs yes, but one of my men will go with you. Good, he can carry the buffalo hump, I sign. The warrior wanting coffee gets up and follows me outside. As I crouch to enter the tent holding my goods, the warrior stops me. He signs he will enter first. I nod my understanding. As he bends at the waist to enter, I ram my knife into his side. He explodes in one of the loudest yells made by a human I've ever heard. I backed away. The timing of my next move needs to be perfect for my plan to work. The wounded warrior pulls out the knife. Following the blade is a river of blood. I back away. He's holding the bloody blade, ready to cut me to pieces as the other 4 warriors exit my tent at the same time. With all of them facing me, I turn and race to the creek bank. Without breaking stride, I jump down the bank to the creek. Unseen to them, as soon as I pass the lip of the bank, I grab a hold of a tree, which swings me against the bank. I let go and find my way to the small cave where the dogs are hiding. As soon as I settled in the cave carved out of the side of the bank, I count as I watch the Blackfoot warriors fall to the rocks below the bank next to the creek. All 5 suffer hurts. 2 are killed outright, landing on their feet, breaking legs and their backs as they meet the rock-strewn creek below. I hear legs and arm bones snap. Not one of them is in shape to stop me. I reach up for my weapons, my rifle, pistol, hawk, and knife. I don't want to attract any individual attentions from enemy warriors. I dispatch the 3 living Blackfoot with bladed weapons, hawk, and knife. I collect their weapons. All of them have muskets and filled possible bags. 3 of them have bows and quivers filled with arrows. Each has a knife and either a hawk or a war club. I count coup on the 3 before sending them well to wherever Blackfoot warriors go after death. After checking on the dogs, I climb the bank to my tent. I circle the area till I find their horses. There are 8, 5 with crude saddles, 2 carrying supplies on pack saddles and new panniers. The last one is a stallion, a magnificent animal. In the dark, I do not recognize his breed. I lead them to my tent and my horses. I make quick hobbles before unburdening the horses of saddles or packs. I add the packs to my second tent. The crude saddle I leave out. They will not be going with me. With the horses watered and grazing, I carefully climb down the bank via the steps I cut into the dirt. This is not the first time I have camped here, but it is the first time I had to fight, however unequally, Blackfoot warriors. I carefully check each body for additional weapons and pouches. The moccasins on 2 of them will fit me. They are new enough to keep. The coat made from the Hudson Bay blanket and the war shirt under, both from the leader, I decided to keep. When I have souvenired everything I want, I launch the bodies down the creek. My hope is they will float downstream away from my tent and hiding spot before beaching. I wash my hands and climb the bank for the last time this night. I hope. The male dog is outside the lodge waiting for me. He enters after I do. With a last look at his family, he settles on the bearskin next to me. The hump steaks have burned, the bread is gone, but all is not lost. The coffee pot is slowly and merrily bubbling on the special rock set inside the fire ring. I pull it off, add more wood, and cut additional steaks from the buffalo hump suspended from the tent poles above us. I mix more bread dough and get 3 sticks browning next to the coals before cutting up the burnt hump steaks into dog-sized bits. They all have earned a special supper. In between, I pour another cup of coffee, adding both sugar and canned milk. I can't stop the building anticipation. The first sip is as glorious as I reckoned it would be. I finished the meal uninterrupted this time. The dogs are asleep, all of them. I'm still wound up. I can't sleep. I need to do something. I'll look over the Blackfoot arms. The 5 muskets taken from the Blackfoot find a place in the other tent. I do not need them, but maybe I can trade them to the Pilgrims on their way to Oregon. I am surprised at the amount of them that try the trek unarmed. The possibles, however, I can always use more powder and more lead. I store the 5 powder horns in muskets. The lead balls are all different caliber than my 54. I dig out the melting pot and dies. I can recast the lead balls into a caliber I can use. I work for a couple of hours. The work soothes the agitation I always feel after a battle, large or small. As I put aside the still warm lead balls, I feel ready to sleep. I add wood to the fire, roll into the cedar bows covered by the buffalo robes, and pulling the Grizz pelt over me, hair side down. I fell asleep, knowing that the dogs will warn me of danger. Outside, I hear the horses moving, drinking, or eating. All as it should be. Finally, at the end of a very long and stressful day, I close my eyes. The Ice Cave. I must admit, one of our most profitable enterprises came about and developed quite by accident. That is, cutting ice from the pond I built at the edge of the river behind the cabin. During the cold winter months, we'd cut and move ice. We'd transport it to a cave Willow found while exploring the river behind the cabin. She found the cave by accident. Mary suggests we use the sawdust left after cutting and fitting the logs we fashioned into our cabin to cover the chunks of ice. We add the sawdust from our firewood-making projects. Her idea works, keeping our meat on ice during the warm summer months. I build shelves into the cave's walls for additional food storage. The 6 of us work through the fall months, canning our extras from the gardens. The cave also holds hanging quarters of our next winter's meat. Buffalo, venison, bear, and beef before processing it into smaller parcels. I add the other half of our meat, cut into manageable chunks, on pallets high into trees by the river after the first snow and the cave fills. The meat freezes and we can take what we need when we need it. Learning how to cut and transport the ice involved much trial and error, mostly error. I learned a valuable philosophical ideal. You can learn how to do a thing the correct way by doing it the wrong way. For me, it was just the ice project. Our 3rd winter proves my point. Our efforts were half of the previous year's, and the amount of ice doubled. Chapter 9, The Grizz. We are taking our time exploring by slowly riding over the prairie of South Pass, getting to know the land around us. Our 4th winter is well past us, and we decide to take a short late spring family expedition close to home, yet far enough out of sight to appreciate coming home later this afternoon. The morning is still early. We have allowed the entire day to hunt for shed antlers, mushrooms, and many of the herbs my wives have used through the long and cold winter. Nate rides his horse secure and confident in the Indian way. Our friend Man is swift as antelope, and Gray Beaver taught him. The 3 young children ride horses while strapped into cradle boards. Willow shows Mary and Alice how to secure the kids. I stop my horse, my 3 wives on their horses, my 2 sons on their horses, my 3 young kids, and all our packed horses in a small clump of trees by a feeder creek before riding into the open land around the pass. After climbing from the saddle, I stretch my back and take a look around before helping each wife from their saddle. The 5 kids remain on their horses. The creek flows along the edge of the ridge. This ridge leads us to the pass. From here it is open and clear of trees as far as an eye can see. I find the fire pit where we expected it, about 30 yards from the horses hobbled in a field of grass next to the creek. We have used this camp many times in the past, usually stopped in this very place to take a break during our first wanderings and later as we hunt across the pass. I get the fire started. I'm kneeling down adding large wood, enough to make coals. I dunked the old socks filled with ground coffee last night before riding from the cabin in the coffee pot full of creek water. It is not yet close to boiling when every squirrel in the woods next to us sets in announcing their alarms. The noise of the screeching makes me stop everything I'm doing. I feel the need to call the girls and my sons and babies to me before whatever is coming our way gets here. Mary, Alice, Willow, on me now. Trouble's coming. I need you here now. Don't dally, I yell out at one. Failing on seeing them, I shout out a second and a third time. As my anxiousness builds, I see all 3 of them hurrying, returning to our camp. I take a deep breath and prepare for whatever that is. I see a flock of mixed birds lift from the trees and fly west, away from our part of the woods. What's so urgent you call for us that way? Asked Mary. I can see her irritation building. Something has upset all the little wood and prairie critters. Whatever this is has chased them from the trees, I tell her. What is it? Asks Alice. I don't know what it is. All I know is it ain't good. We need to huddle up. Double check your hobbles and bring in the kids and the weapons, I ask him. Is that not an overreaction? Asks Willow. I don't think so. If it is a problem, it will not hurt to make ready for a mule deer buck sprints past our hasty camp. He is running all out. Streaking through our camp, the buck does not bother looking our way. We could have reached out and touched him as he came by. There is something amiss. I kneel down at the coffee pot to pour the 6 of us a cup. The girls turn, looking toward the tree line. As we watch, a small herd of wood critters, rabbits, raccoons, skunks, and a couple of badgers waddle out from the trees. The 3 of us look on in awe. All 3 of us know something ain't right. What do you think? Begins Willow. She cannot finish her sentence. We hear the sounds of hooves pounding along a hard-packed dirt trail. Something about this raises the small hairs on the back of my neck. Ignoring the coffee, I reach over to pick up my rifle. When not in hand, it's never far from me. I touch my possibles, making sure they're still in place. Continuing the routine, I check both pistols, the fighting knife, and my hawk. Everything is as it should be. I am ready. At least I hope so. I look over and see my wives are double-checking their weapons. I look to the horses. All the horses stand alert. The kids huddle in a tight group. As I watch, the ears of our horses begin swiveling, turning and moving to get the clearest line on a noise only they can hear. I notice movement from the corner of my eye. Turning to that direction, I watch 2 bull elk running through the trees coming from the closest ridge. In less than a minute, they run the width of the South Pass Valley. The sound of their hooves striking the dry trail echoes through across the pass. If I didn't see the elk, I'd think it was sounds of stampeding horses. Both of my white wives watch with open mouths. Willow, my crow's wife, is gathering her weapons. Whatever this is, we all know, she begins. Our ears strain, picking up the sounds of breaking branches, the crunch of hooves walking over dry leaves, and heavy breathing. That run taxes the strength of these majestic and regal bulls. We hear small rocks sliding off the trail into the sagebrush. Without slowing or stopping, we watch these magnificent and royal stags straining to escape, following the path of the deer ahead of them. Something is out there that the deer and the elk do not like. A movement running down the ridge attracts my eye. I see a big gray, silver, and brown-colored mass bobbing along the trail the bull elk just ran. My brain does not make sense of what my eyes see. I don't want to take my eyes off whatever it is to fetch my spyglass, because by the time I find the moving blob again, it'll be running past me, and I want to identify it before it gets that close. Watching carefully, I observe the animal crossing a small clearing. What I see is a bit unnerving. My stomach lurches. I jump to my feet. What I see makes my knees get weak. In a space of less than 2 minutes, I move from expecting a cup of coffee to seeing the end of my life. Watching the rapidly approaching mass of gray hair, I must choose to stand and die or fight or run. Since my days of running from my problems are far behind me, the choice is an easy one to make. I chose to stand and fight to protect me and mine if necessary. I never expected to find myself reacting this way. For the many years I've spent in the Great Stony Mountains, I've come close to grizzly bears several times, but I've only needed to fight and kill one. Today I know that choice is here again, but at what cost? Battle-hardened? Do I stand and die to protect my... In the past, most of my fighting happened in an instant with no time to plan or think of a strategy. There is not time to worry or plan right now. This is the first time I see an enemy approaching, knowing he's coming directly at me, for me. I know that as soon as he sees me or smells the fire in my camp, he'll be coming to kill and destroy me and my family. Whatever has chased him from his forest has brought him here to us. With shaking hands, I slap myself hard in the face. That does the trick. I've made my choice. Get to the horses and prepare your rifles. Don't fire unless the Grizz stops to fight. He may run past us and choose to leave us alone. I tell my 3 wives and young sons. Do you really believe that bear will run past us? Asked Mary. I don't know. Right now we need to prepare to protect ourselves. If that includes the time to ride away on our horses, well, I want to be prepared. With a shake of their heads, they run to ready their horses. I watch the girls saddle their horses and double-check. They are secure and will not escape during the fury I expect is headed our way. Willow works with a calm acceptance that Mary and Alice do not have. I stand in the center of our small camp away from the horses, watching death quickly approaching. I hope I'm standing far enough away to keep my family safe. The sounds from every small forest creature and bird no longer broadcast over our camp. If I had not seen what is coming our way with my own eyes, I would never believe it. The gray and brown ball of fur is a mature silverback grizzly bear. He in himself is frightening. It is the who chasing him which brings a knot of dread to the pit of my being. Pursuing the mountain's top predator are a different, a more frightening marauder, a Blackfoot hunting party. I hear pounding hooves hammering against the trail. I hear grunts and gasps, both animal and human. I feel the wind passing directly in my face. I smell crushed plants, tree limbs, and freshly torn earth. The horses shriek as the Grizz passes by. He slows. Before I call out a challenge, he has his eyes on me. I hear a scream, his war cry. All nose stops. An instant later, the tree line explodes. I can hear the Grizz breathing heavily through his nose. A sharp intake of air. He's found my scent. He stands. I bring my rifle to bear, separated by mere feet. There's only the flat sagebrush-covered prairie between us. He can bat my rifle away from him with a single swipe of his huge arm. He's in my sights. From the corner of an eye, I see a paw heading for the end of my rifle. The claws extend all of 6 inches long. At the noise of rolling rocks behind him, the grizzly bear turns his head, looking behind himself, back into the tree line. I hear the horses at the same time the great bear does. After a final gaze deep into my eyes, he runs onto the plain surrounding the South Pass, trampling the sage without a thought as he runs. I watch his unique waddling kind of lope. I see several arrows piercing his lush hide, bobbing in time to his shambling. I reckon the Blackfoot have been hunting this great bear for a fair distance. He got away from them once. I hope he will do it again. I do not have much faith in that hope. Crossing the open sage plains, he makes a large and exposed target. I hear the horses before they race into sight. Before me is a sight I will long remember. 5 Blackfoot warriors kick their horses ahead, following the trail of the old Grizz. The torn prairie grass and the sagebrush, with all bowled over with the small cedar trees, leaves a trail easily followed. All of these Blackfoot are young warriors. I reckon they, like us, are out for some late spring exercise. Away from the trees, the 5 riders spread out over the sagebrush surrounding the Grizz. War cries, ecstatic over the hunt, erupt from each man. While only one warrior darting past me at the fire looks my way, the others keep their eyes on their prey. I expect to see animosity, if not hate. Instead, he is as surprised as I am. He does not spare a look at my wives or their horses. He dismisses me as he concentrates on making up lost time. Taking his eyes off the Grizz has cost him his leading position. He pushes his horse to regain that station. I watch as they race across the plains of South Pass. For as long as I watch, the bear escapes their arrows. Slowly, the noise of the forest's small animals and birds return. I am rooted in place, still and shocked at the amazing scene I witnessed, until hearing an angry squirrel commanding me to leave. I am rooted in place. I cannot move. I look around. I can plainly see the results of the chase. The grass and the brush of the plain is torn, the only evidence of their passing. Inside, I'm unsure. Did it happen? Was all this just me? I look over at my wives and our horses. My horses cry out. That familiar call motivates me to move. Now I believe that my eyes have seen it's true. This sight did occur, and I am walking away from an angry Grizz and a Blackfoot hunting party. I would not say untouched, but inside I feel something somehow different. I can't explain how. I simply know it. I don't remember walking to my wives and horses until a wet nose rubs the side of my face. That contact brings me out of this strange stupor. I don't remember what I was thinking about or seeing in my head, but my horse escapes from the hobble after seeing me in a state he doesn't understand. He's coming to my aid. Pushing against me with his head, he nudges me until I begin petting and rubbing him. I pick up my discarded rifle. I walk to the fire. Looking down, I see the coffee pot is now beginning to boil. I expect it to be dry. I feel like hours have passed when it has only been minutes. I check the load and the cap on my rifle. Inserting the ramrod, I see the end of the barrel comes to the correct mark on the hickory ramrod. It's loaded. Doing this simple chore breaks the spell. When I look around, I see my 3 wives, safe with Nate and River Otter, and their younger ones, all seated and drinking coffee at the fire, watching me, safe with loaded weapons. I should sit down to enjoy coffee and lunch with my family. It's about time. I take a cup of coffee offered by Mary. After Alice hands me a skewer of smoked venison, I begin feeling the rigors of the day pass us by. Wait, no, I need to see how it ends. I run to my saddle horse, jump into the saddle, and shout to my wives, I'll be back. I got to see what happened. It's time to finish this day. I follow the torn trail, evidence of the fleeing Grizz and the 5 horses tearing up the prairie grass. I see 3 bloody arrows laying on the grass. I keep on until I notice blood on the trail. At this rate, the Grizz will pile up and the Blackfoot will have him. Sure enough, I see the 5 hunters forming a circle around the Grizz. He stands, looking at them, growling, leaking blood and spittle. He bats the air around him with his 2 smaller arms. Even from here, I can see his extended claws. At the same time, it is exciting and sorrowful. The Grizz escapes their clutches for miles until now the inevitable. As I watch, I see him grow weary, his battering arms slow. His growls lose their intensity. I see the expression of the 5 warriors change. They see the same thing I do. The leader takes his spear and ends the fight. The Grizz stands growling for a moment, then falls. His body works like a bellows, bringing in and expanding air. The hairy bellows slow. His breathing becomes ragged. All at once there is an unexpected growl and then nothing. The hunt is over. The waiting warriors do not yell or celebrate. They slide from their horses. Standing around the Grizz, they pull their knives, singing some sort of death song. The Blackfoot warriors give their thanks while paying tribute to the great bear. After the brief ceremony, they skin the bear. They pack the skull and the best cuts of meat on their horses. Only then do they see me watching them. The leader signs me friend. I return the sign, turn my horse, and ride back to camp. Come sundown, as we lay on the grass prairie, looking up at the sky filled with abundant stars, I thank the Creator. He has allowed me to win yet another victory. Thoughts of an encounter with the Grizz and the Blackfoot replay as I recount the action of my family. Watching the night sky, I consider it a fight, even though I averted both returning rifle balls or the Blackfoot warriors slinging their arrows my way. We avert battle but partook in a fight. I try to explain to my wives what I saw and what I think it means to me. I do not know if they understand how profound the experience was to me. I faced 2 enemies without firing a shot. Every time I remember that day, the feeling returns. I wake surprised with the sun in my eyes. It's time to pack up and return home. Buffalo chip fire. We have not seen a tree in several days. I was prepared for this outcome. We collected buffalo chips to use as fuel for our cooking fires. A tarp hangs from all 4 corners under the wagon's bed. As the pilgrims walk along the trail, they are to pick up and add dried buffalo chips to the suspended canvas, only the dry patties. At first, many of the women show a reluctance not only for collecting the fuel and handling it, but then eating food cooked over its fire. All the kids think it's a funny joke. Going to bed one night hungry removes all reluctance from everybody. A small pit less than 12 inches deep in the prairie. A particularly dry chip is chosen. I break it apart into several smaller sized chunks. Retrieving my flint and steel fire starting kit for my possibilities, I am ready to begin instructing the men and women in the wagon train. This is an important skill necessary for both sexes to learn and become proficient in. Many times their very lives will hang in the balance as someone tries starting a fire in either rain or snow. Setting a piece of char cloth on top of the flint, I began hitting the flint against the steel. Trapping sparks on the char cloth, it begins to smolder. Blowing carefully on the cloth will increase the embers. Laying the char cloth on the dry chip, I begin blowing on it. When the majority of the chip is black and smoking, further blowing on it will bring out a flame. Placing that piece in the hole in the sand, I carefully add small pieces of dry chips, increasing the heat. Even without a flame, the smoldering chips are hot. Admittingly, this is a lot of work. However, there is one big advantage of this fire over a wood fire. The lack of flame will not give away your position like the flames of a wood fire. Those flames can be seen from a long distance. Adding smaller pieces of dry chip increase the size of the fire. Placing a grate over the fire and they are ready to start cooking. I reckon the day is a good one. They learn the lesson and hopefully will finish the journey. Chapter 10, Rocky Mountains. I am Kills Quiet, the name the Crows gave me when I became a warrior. My family knew me as Nate. The firstborn of my pa, Zeph, and my ma, Mary. Before heading south to ride as a scout for the Blue Coat Cavalry, I put down the first words of our family story. My many brothers and sisters will add to it. This is a tale that will take many stories to cover our lives. This is the first of many. Knowing the beaver hat is now out of fashion, a man can no longer make a living by trapping beaver alone. Pa says the isolated life is not for their girls and last-born sons. Both of their parents agree to send the 4 girls to attend a boarding school and what they called a finishing school back east. I am unsure about what they finish. I learned much later that this is a school that will turn my sisters into ladies. I wish them luck. They're going to need it. They send each of the girls with money safe and a trust available after they successfully finish the finishing school. The folks hope the girls will get a start on a good life after they relearn how to live close to people. Ain't no one that wants to marry a wildcat. Don't get me wrong. I look up to each of my sisters. It is just, well, they have lived in the wilds of the Great Stonies for their entire life. They can ride, trap, shoot, and take care of themselves. Each one has killed Blackfoot Indians and white outlaw trappers. Each can hold her own facing the sutler at the trading post, a panther or a bear. Each of them can provide for themselves from shooting game critters to cleaning, through the butchering, and up to tanning the hides. I do not reckon these are skills that will come in handy back east at the finishing schools. How it will help them, well, they do not know the word can't or too hard. They will be fine once the longing for the wilds stops or gets tamped down. I wish I could be there the first time one of those teachers tries to do what's called corporal punishment on any one of them. A teacher may get the first hit, but I guarantee that unless someone pulls her off, well, let's just say that teacher in the school will learn a hard lesson come that day. There is no give to any of my sisters. They had excellent teachers for their early life, their ma and their pa. I hold each of them as an example of the kind of women, came the day, that I'll need to settle down with. I do not see that event happening, but if it does, well, she has big moccasins to fill. Although, like I told Pa and Ma too, that I reckon all 4 are too old for any Eastern teacher to learn that mountain life away from them. Oh, sure, they may learn how to act like normal girls, but they ain't never going to be normal with a capital N. I reckon that to be good for all 4 of them. I'm sorrowful that I may never ever see them again, but that might be for their good. I reckon the wild has grown too long in me. I have no desire to head east of the Mississippi River. I am older than all my brothers and sisters, and it will be hard, dang near impossible for me to civilize. I reckon I don't want to. I also reckon this very well may be the last time I see Pa or our ma's. I'm glad Pa got a new Crow wife to share his life with. I wish them both well, but I have no intention of changing my life. A second-born Crow son died due to a Blackfoot arrow riding for the Bluecoats as a scout. The second-born white son died to a Comanche arrow also riding for the Bluecoats, but he was with the Texas Rangers on loan as a scout. The rest of the second-born's lives and thrives in the Great Stony Mountains. I am a firstborn, and Pa reckons it is time for me to move on also. The mountains are changing. The old ways are gone. It's time for me to leave or to change, to adapt, to make a different life for myself. Once Pa makes up his mind, there is no trying to change it. The only one who could ever get Pa to change was one of our ma's, and that was only if he was in the wrong and Ma laid it all out for him to see clear. On this, he knows he is right. My sisters know he is right, and worst of all, I know he is right. I trap and hunt to outfit myself to leave the mountains for a promised land called Texas. Even in a blind canyon high in the Rocky Mountains, I have many friends and visitors. I listen as my Crow grandfather told me the stories of the mountains. Now I hear a story of Texas. I don't need much but to refill my possibles. Everything else I make ready. My jerky sack is full, same as with my pemmican sack. I ride from the heights and wilds of the Rocky Mountains for an unknown future. That does not bother me. What troubles me is knowing I will probably never return, even for a brief visit. For better or worse, I'm on my own. I aim to make a life in Texas. Doing what, I have no idea. Like Pa, I can ride all day. I've killed every kind of critter there is, but for the great white bears in the snow country. I can take care of myself, having proved it through snowstorms, floods, Indian raids, and angry wild animal encounters. I have the scars to prove I've bested Indian warriors, grizzly bears, and worst of all, men from the east coming to my mountains. Most of the trappers and hunters I've met are good guys. The ones that shared this life are good men, but there are others that came after those men. They are the lazy ones, the ones willing to rob, kill, and steal from the hard workers. They make their living off of honest folk. I have run into many such despicable men. They do not survive the meeting. From everything I've heard, Texas will be the same. I am ready. I've cut my teeth stopping such men, and I reckon I will continue to do so. I will ride east from the heights of the mountains this spring. I plan to visit Fort Bence, Santa Fe, and El Paso, but keep riding. Those wild places do not hold my interest. I will ride until reaching San Antonio. I will stop to see the ruins of the sacred Alamo and hear more stories of heroes. I grew up hearing the stories of many kinds of heroes. Crow, Blackfeet, and the defenders of the innocent. This is the beginning of my story, but not the end of my family's story.
That concludes Zephaniah Mountain Man, Rocky Mountain Maturity by Mike Mackessy. We hope you have enjoyed this story. You can find many more of Mike Mackessy's books on Amazon. This podcast was brought to you by Dusty Saddles Publishing, home of the best Western books on the market. Join us next episode for the book Honored Friend and Hero by Jeff Crawford.